My in-laws hired a private investigator to prove I was a gold digger. Now they're desperate for my money. The first time I met Luke's parents, I wore my nicest dress, a simple navy blue A-line I'd found on clearance and saved for special occasions. I spent 40 minutes on my makeup and borrowed a pearl necklace from my roommate. I wanted to make a good impression. "You look beautiful," Luke whispered as we walked up the cobblestone driveway to the Ashford estate. The house, no mansion, loomed before us, all stone and columns and perfectly manicured hedges. My palms were sweating. "They're just people, Sarah," Luke said, squeezing my hand. "Rich people, but still just people." That was Luke, always simplifying things. It was what I loved about him. He saw the world without the complications of class and money, even though he'd been born into both. I had known Luke was wealthy when we met at that tech conference in San Francisco. He wore a watch that probably cost more than my car. But his wealth wasn't what drew me to him. It was the way he leaned forward when I talked about my app idea. How his eyes lit up when I described using AI to create culturally sensitive mental health support. He understood my vision when everyone else saw an unrealistic dream from a blue-collar girl with student loans. What I didn't know then was that the Ashfords weren't just wealthy. They were American aristocracy, 5 generations of real estate moguls and venture capitalists. Old money, the kind that doesn't talk about it because they've always had it. Mrs. Eleanor Ashford opened the door herself, which I would later learn was unusual. She was tall and elegant in a cream-colored pantsuit that probably cost more than my rent. She kissed Luke on both cheeks before turning her gaze to me. "And you must be Sarah," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "We've heard so much about you." The dining room could have fit my entire childhood home. A crystal chandelier hung over a table set with china I was afraid to touch. Mr. Richard Ashford sat at the head, a glass of scotch already in hand. He stood when we entered, giving Luke a firm handshake. "Son," he said, before turning to me. His eyes scanned me from head to toe, lingering just a moment too long on my clearance rack dress. "Miss Carter, welcome." "Thank you for having me," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. The questions started before the appetizers arrived. "Computer science, is it?" Mrs. Ashford asked, cutting into her foie gras with surgical precision. "And where did you study?" "State University," I answered. "On scholarship." "How resourceful," she replied, and I couldn't tell if it was a compliment or not. "And your family?" Mr. Ashford asked. "What business are they in?" I felt Luke tense beside me. "My dad is a mechanic. Mom's a nurse at the county hospital." "Salt of the earth," Mr. Ashford said, nodding as if I'd confirmed something. The rest of the dinner continued in this vein. Polite questions designed to place me firmly outside their social circle. They asked about my career aspirations with the same tone someone might use to humor a child talking about becoming an astronaut. "I'm working on an app," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It uses AI to provide culturally tailored mental health support. Traditional therapy can be inaccessible or culturally inappropriate for many communities, and I think technology can help bridge that gap." There was a pause, and then Mrs. Ashford said, "How innovative," in a way that suggested she thought it was anything but. Luke jumped in, his voice excited. "Sarah's prototype is incredible. The algorithm she's developed can detect cultural nuances and language patterns and adapt responses accordingly." "Sounds expensive to develop," Mr. Ashford remarked. "It is," I admitted. "I'm working on securing funding." Mrs. Ashford smiled thinly. "Perhaps Luke could introduce you to some of Richard's associates." She turned to her husband. "Didn't you say the foundation was looking for charity projects?" "Charity projects." As if my years of research and coding were a hobby. 6 months later, when Luke proposed, I said yes, because I loved him. His kindness, his optimism, the way he saw the world as a place of possibility. I said yes, despite knowing what came with him, the Ashfords and their world where I would always be an outsider. The engagement party was at their country club. I wore a dress Luke had bought me, designer, expensive, but I still felt like an imposter. Luke's cousins, his parents' friends, old boarding school classmates, they all looked at me with the same expression, curiosity mixed with suspicion. I overheard 2 women talking in the bathroom. "She's pretty, I'll give her that," one said. "Pretty convenient," the other replied. Computer science grad with no connections suddenly lands in Ashford. Please. I walked out of the stall, washed my hands, and smiled at their shocked faces. The acoustics in here are amazing, aren't they? I said before walking out. When I told Luke, he was furious. They don't know you, he said. They don't see what I see. But as the wedding plans grew, so did the tensions. Mrs. Ashford had opinions on everything. The venue too modest, the guest list too small, my dress too simple. Every choice I made was wrong, not because it was bad, but because it was mine. Dinners at the Ashford home became exercises in restraint. Mrs. Ashford would ask about my app development with a smile that suggested she was humoring me. Mr. Ashford would talk about when, not if, I would join their family foundation, as if my career was a phase I would outgrow once I had access to their money. Luke tells us you're still working on that app of yours, Mrs. Ashford said one evening, 3 months before our wedding. How persistent. Lou mind, I corrected her. And yes, I'm making progress. Such dedication, she said, cutting her steak. Though one wonders if it's the best use of your time with the wedding approaching. I felt Luke's hand on my knee under the table, a gentle squeeze of support. Actually, I said, I just secured a meeting with a small angel investor next week. Mr. Ashford raised an eyebrow. Anyone we know? I doubt it, I replied. They specialize in startups from underrepresented founders. Mrs. Ashford's smile tightened. How specific? After dinner, as Luke spoke with his father about some family business matter, Mrs. Ashford cornered me in the hallway. Her perfume, something expensive and subtle, surrounded us as she leaned in. Sarah, she said, her voice low, let's be honest with each other. My son has a generous heart. It's one of his best qualities, but it can also be his weakness. I stared at her, unwilling to break eye contact. We'll find out who you really are, she said, her smile never faltering. One way or another, I laughed. A short, nervous sound. I'm exactly who I've always been, Mrs. Ashford. She patted my arm. We'll see, dear. We'll see. The next morning, I received a text from my old roommate. Did you know someone's been asking questions about you? Some private investigator type came by the coffee shop. And that's when I realized Mrs. Ashford's threat wasn't empty. They were actually investigating me, digging through my past, looking for dirt, for proof that I was exactly what they thought, a gold digger, a social climber, a fraud. They wanted evidence that I didn't love their son. They would find nothing because there was nothing to find. But the realization hit me hard. In their eyes, my greatest crime was already proven. I had the audacity to love someone from their world while coming from mine. The manila envelope arrived on a Tuesday. Luke brought it in with the rest of the mail, tossing it onto our kitchen counter while scrolling through his phone. Neither of us paid it any attention until evening, when I sorted through the pile and found it had no return address, just Luke's name typed on a clean white label. Probably wedding stuff from Mom, Luke said, barely looking up from his laptop. We were both working from our apartment that day, him creating marketing strategies for sustainable brands, me coding between my shifts at the tech support call center. I handed it to him and watched as he tore it open, expecting some venue brochures or seating chart suggestions. Instead, he pulled out a thick stack of papers bound with a black clip. His face changed as he read the cover page. "What the hell?" he whispered. I moved behind him to read over his shoulder, and my stomach dropped. At the top of the page, background investigation, Sarah Lynn Carter. Below it, commissioned by Richard and Eleanor Ashford. Luke, I started, but had no words to follow. The report was thorough. 43 pages documenting every job I'd ever held, my credit history, interviews of former roommates, copies of my lease agreements, student loan amounts, and even social media posts from my college years. There were photographs, grainy surveillance shots of me entering my office building, getting coffee, meeting with a former classmate I'd been collaborating with on LuMind. My life, reduced to a dossier of evidence. The most sickening part came near the end. The investigator summary. Subject presents as financially vulnerable, significant student debt, unstable employment history, and potentially opportunistic. No criminal history or major interpersonal red flags detected. However, her sudden interest in a relationship with Luke Ashford coincides with the failure of her first attempt at startup funding. Timeline suggests possible strategic motivation. Recommend caution regarding joint financial ventures or prenuptial considerations. My hands trembled as anger and humiliation washed over me. They'd packaged my struggle, every extra shift, every budget compromise, every hustle to make my dream happen as evidence of my unworthiness. Luke slammed the report shut, his face pale. I can't believe they would. He stopped, running both hands through his hair. Actually, I can believe it. This is exactly who they are. I sat down at our kitchen table, legs suddenly weak. They think I'm after your money. You've never once asked me for money, Luke said, voice rising. I had to practically beg you to let me pay for anything when we started dating. It was true. I had always insisted on splitting checks, on paying my share. Pride maybe, or the knowledge that I needed to prove myself, not to Luke, but to myself, to them. Luke was pacing now, phone in hand. I'm calling them. Wait. But he was already dialing, his face flushed with anger. I could hear the tinny sound of his mother's voice answering. You had her investigated? He said without preamble. What kind of no? Don't deny it. I'm holding the report right now. I watched his face as he listened, his expression shifting from anger to disbelief. For my own good? Are you serious? A pause. No, this isn't what love looks like, Mother. This is control. This is... He stopped, listening again. You know what? Don't come to the wedding. Either of you. He hung up and set the phone down with deliberate calm that scared me more than his anger. What did she say? I asked quietly. That they were protecting me. That they needed to be sure. He looked at me, eyes full of pain. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I should have been relieved by his immediate defense, but something else nagged at me. Did you read it? The whole report? I don't need to. He pushed it away. But you're wondering, I said softly. Part of you is wondering if they found something real. Luke sat down across from me, taking my hands. No, it's okay, I said. It would be natural to wonder. I pulled the report back and flipped through it. Here, my credit score. Not great, because I took out loans for college and my app development. Here, the unstable employment history is me working contract jobs so I could have flexible hours to build LuMind. I looked him in the eye. Everything in here is true. I am financially vulnerable. I did grow poor. I am ambitious, but not for your money, for my own success. Luke was quiet for a long moment. I don't care about any of this. I love you, not where you came from or what you own. But your family is part of who you are, I said. And they'll never see me as an equal. We sat in silence as the reality of our situation settled around us. This wasn't just about a wedding or even about money. It was about belonging, about whether our relationship could survive being torn between two worlds. The next morning, Luke called his parents' lawyer and had his trust fund split, half to remain in his name, half donated anonymously to mental health organizations serving underprivileged communities. When I asked him why, he said simply, so they know I choose you, not what they think you want from me. 2 weeks later, we stood at City Hall with only my parents and best friend as witnesses. I wore a cream pantsuit I'd saved for months to buy. Luke wore a suit without a tie. We exchanged simple bands and simpler vows. No Ashfords present, no grand reception, just us, starting our life on our terms. That night, lying in bed in our modest one-bedroom apartment, Luke traced patterns on my arm and asked, do you regret not having the big wedding? The dress? The party? I thought about the life I'd imagined as a little girl, the fairy tale. Then I thought about the life I wanted now, what I was building with my own hands, my own mind. No, I said honestly. But this isn't over. Luke propped himself up on one elbow. What do you mean? I smiled in the darkness. Your parents think they know who I am, what I'm capable of. They have no idea. We don't need them, Luke said. We'll be fine on our own. He meant it as reassurance, but I heard it as a challenge. Fine wasn't what I was aiming for. Not anymore. As Luke fell asleep beside me, I opened my laptop and got back to work on LuMind. I had something to prove. Not to the Ashfords, but to myself. And unlike their investigation, my evidence would be built in public, for everyone to see. 3 months into our marriage, we settled into a rhythm. Luke threw himself into his marketing career, landing a promotion at his firm. I juggled my day job at the tech support center with nights and weekends dedicated to Lumine. We rarely spoke about the Ashfords, though their presence haunted the edges of our lives like a persistent shadow. Every few weeks, a text would arrive from Eleanor. "Hope you're doing well. The Jenkins asked about you at the club." Or from Richard. "Heard about a tech fellowship you might be interested in. Your choice, of course." Luke would show me these messages with a mixture of guilt and frustration. "They're trying," he'd say, not sounding convinced. "They're fishing," I'd reply, waiting to see if we're struggling enough to come crawling back. We weren't struggling, exactly, but we weren't thriving either. Our apartment was small, a one-bedroom in a decent but unglamorous neighborhood. We watched our spending, cooked at home, and took the subway instead of cabs. Luke never complained, though I sometimes caught him staring wistfully at restaurant menus before suggesting we eat in again. "I'm sorry," I said one night, after turning down dinner at a new place his colleagues had recommended. Luke looked genuinely confused. "For what?" I gestured vaguely at our apartment. "At the grocery store, pasta I was cooking." "This. You could be living very differently." He cupped my face in his hands. "I chose this life with you, and I've never been happier." I believed him, mostly. But late at night, coding while he slept, I'd wonder if he missed his old world, the ease of it, the polished perfection. Those thoughts fueled my work, pushing me to code faster, think smarter, solve the problems that kept Lumine from reaching its potential. The breakthrough came 6 months after our wedding. I'd been struggling with how to make the AI responsive to subtle cultural differences in how people express emotional distress. Different cultures have different metaphors for pain, different thresholds for seeking help, different expectations of what support should look like. I was at work, half listening to a customer explain their internet connectivity issues, when the solution hit me. Lumine needed cultural mediators, not just translators. The algorithm wasn't just matching language patterns, it needed to recognize and bridge worldviews. That night, I coded until sunrise, implementing a new framework that allowed the AI to recognize not just what was said, but the cultural context behind it. 3 weeks and countless coffee-fueled nights later, I had a working prototype that could distinguish between 15 different cultural approaches to mental health. I uploaded videos demonstrating the prototype to a few developer forums under a username that couldn't be traced back to me. By morning, my inbox was flooded with messages. One stood out from Dr. Mei Zhang, a renowned AI ethicist who had written extensively about the cultural biases in healthcare technology. "This is exactly what I've been saying we need. Who are you? I'd like to talk." We met at a quiet coffee shop, far from my usual haunts. Dr. Zhang was small, sharp-eyed, and got straight to the point. "Your algorithm handles cultural nuance better than anything I've seen," she said, stirring her tea. "Who's funding you?" "No one," I admitted. "It's just me right now." She raised an eyebrow. "That's gonna change. I'm heading a new incubator for ethical AI applications. We have $1 million seed fund for the right projects." I nearly choked on my coffee. $1 million? "For starters," she said. "But I need to know who I'm dealing with. No pseudonyms, no shadows." I hesitated. If I stepped into the light with Lumine, the Ashfords would know. The tech world was small, and their connections ran deep. "Your hesitation tells me there's a story," Dr. Zhang said. So I told her, not everything, but enough. About coming from a background where tech dreams were luxuries. About people underestimating me. About needing to prove my worth. She listened quietly, then said, "Your background isn't a liability, Sarah. It's why your product works. You understand what it means to navigate between worlds." 2 days later, she sent a formal investment offer. $1.2 million for a 15% stake in Lumine. The contract sat on my laptop for a week while I wrestled with what to do. I hadn't told Luke about any of this. Not the breakthrough, not Dr. Zhang, certainly not the officer. I told myself I was waiting until it was certain, that I didn't want to disappoint him if it fell through. But the truth was more complicated. This was mine. The one thing in my life that had nothing to do with the Ashford name or money. The one thing no one could claim I hadn't earned entirely on my own merit. One night, Luke found me staring at the contract on my screen. "What's that?" he asked, massaging my shoulders as he peered at the document. I could have minimized the window, made an excuse. Instead, I took a deep breath. "It's an investment offer," I said. For Lumind. His hands stilled on my shoulders. Investment? From who? Dr. Mei Zhang. She runs an ethical AI incubator. I scrolled down to show him the numbers. 1.2 million for 15%. Luke was silent for so long that I turned to look at him. His face held an expression I couldn't read. When did this happen? He asked finally. I explained everything. The breakthrough, the forums, the meeting. With each detail, his expression shifted from confusion to something else. Pride mixed with hurt. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. I needed to do this myself, I said, without the Ashford name attached to it. Without anyone thinking I succeeded because of connections or privilege or me, he finished quietly. That's not what I meant. It's okay, he said, but his smile was strained. I understand. And Sarah, this is incredible. You're incredible. He hugged me tight, but something had shifted between us. A small crack had formed. Not in our love, but in our sense of being a team against the world. That night, I signed the contract and emailed it to Dr. Zhang. At 2 a.m., my phone pinged with her response, "Welcome to the next level. We start Monday." I lay awake, watching Luke sleep, wondering if I should have handled things differently. But as dawn broke, made my decision. I would keep building in the shadows, a little longer, not forever, just until Lumind was strong enough to withstand whatever storms might come when it finally stepped into the light. What I didn't know then was that the storm would come much sooner than I expected, and from a direction I never anticipated. 6 months flew by in a blur of code, meetings, and late nights. The Lumind office, a converted warehouse space that Dr. Zhang had helped secure, hummed with the energy of our growing team. We'd hired 4 developers, a UI designer, and a cultural psychology consultant. The beta version had 5,000 users and growing. Luke and I had fallen into a new rhythm. He'd taken a senior position at a boutique marketing agency, often working late himself. We passed like ships in the night, exchanging quick kisses and abbreviated versions of our days. When he asked about Lumind, I shared enough to satisfy his curiosity, but held back the full scope of our progress. It wasn't that I didn't trust him. I just wasn't ready to share my creation with the world yet, not even with him. Then came the tweet that changed everything. I was in the middle of a team meeting when my phone started buzzing continuously. Annoyed, I iced it without looking. 10 minutes later, our office manager burst into the conference room, face flushed with excitement. "Sarah, you need to see this. Now." She thrust her tablet in front of me. On the screen was a tweet from Ella Ray, a pop star with 40 million followers who had been open about her struggles with anxiety and cultural identity. Just spent an hour on Lumind and cried my eyes out. First-time therapy has felt like it actually gets my experience as a mixed-race woman with anxiety. This is revolutionary. Everyone needs to try this. Mental health for all. Below it, thousands of retweets, likes, and comments were pouring in by the second. I stared at the screen, momentarily paralyzed. How did she even find us? We're still in limited beta. Our marketing intern cleared her throat. I might have sent her an access code. Her assistant reached out last week. I didn't think she'd actually use it. The room erupted in cheers while I sat, stunned. This wasn't the rollout I had planned. We weren't ready for this level of attention. Our servers would crash, our support team was understaffed, and I had wanted to personally oversee our public launch. But it was happening, ready or not. By evening, Lumind was trending. By midnight, our user count had jumped to 50,000. By morning, my inbox contained interview requests from tech magazines, morning shows, and mental health podcasts. Dr. Zhang called as I was trying to hire emergency server support. "Looks like we're coming out of the shadows," she said, sounding amused. "I'm sending over a PR team. Don't talk to any media until they brief you." I was about to protest when my other line beeped. "Luke, calling." "I have to go," I told Zhang. "My husband's calling." I switched lines, bracing myself. "Hey, Sarah." Luke's voice was strange, tight, almost breathless. "Why am I finding out from my coworkers that my wife is a tech celebrity?" My stomach dropped. "It just happened last night. I was going to tell you." "Were you?" He didn't sound angry, just sad, because it seems like Lumind has been a lot bigger than you've let on for a while now. I closed my eyes. guilt washing over me. I'm sorry. It all moved so fast, and I wanted to prove that you could do it on your own, he finished. I know. I get it. But Sarah, we're supposed to be partners. The hurt in his voice cut deep. You're right. I should have shared this with you. Well, you're definitely sharing it with the world now, he said. Have you seen CNN? I hadn't. I pulled up the website on my computer and there it was, my company logo on the front page with the headline, LuMind, the AI mental health revolution led by unknown tech visionary. Unknown. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'm proud of you, Luke said after a pause. Incredibly proud. I just wish. I know, I said softly. I'm sorry. Can we talk about this tonight? Actually, I think you should come home now. There's something you need to see. When I arrived at our apartment 20 minutes later, I found Luke at the door with a strange expression. What's going on? I asked. He handed me his phone. On the screen was a text from his mother. We saw the news about Sarah's company. Perhaps it's time we all had dinner. As a family. I looked up at him. You're kidding. There's more, he said, unlocking the door. Our small living room was filled with flowers, elaborate arrangements on every surface, each with a small card attached. They started arriving an hour ago, Luke said, picking up one of the cards and handing it to me. Congratulations on your tremendous achievement. We'd love to hear more about your groundbreaking work. With admiration, Richard and Eleanor Ashford. I read it twice, trying to process the shift. The last time I'd seen these names had been on a private investigator's report questioning my character and intentions. Unbelievable, I whispered. They called too, Luke said. Dad wants to meet for lunch tomorrow. I sank onto our sofa, pushing aside a bouquet to make room. Now they're interested. Now that I'm in the news. Luke sat beside me, taking my hand. What do you want to do? I thought about all the dinners where they dismissed my app as a cute hobby. All the thinly veiled sergeants that I was using their son for his money. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to tell them to go to hell. And the other part? I leaned back, considering the question. The other part wants to go to that dinner and show them exactly who Sarah Carter really is. Luke squeezed my hand. Well, the invitations will keep coming. They've been texting me nonstop. As if on cue, his phone chimed with a new message. He checked it and let out a short, disbelieving laugh. What? I asked. He turned the screen toward me. We're hosting a small dinner party Saturday. Nothing fancy, just a few ferns. We'd be honored if you and Sarah would attend. Dad's grilling steaks. Nothing fancy? I repeated incredulously. The last casual dinner I attended at their house had a string quartet. What should I tell them? I was about to say no when another thought occurred to me. A petty, satisfying thought. Tell them, yes. Tell them, we'd be delighted. Luke raised an eyebrow. You sure? Absolutely, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. But first, I have a week of interviews to get through. Apparently, I'm a tech pioneer and visionary now. 3 days later, after I appeared on Tech Today and The Morning Beat, Luke's father called him directly. He says he's proud of me, Luke told me afterward, sounding bewildered. For supporting your vision. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Funny how your parents' opinion of me improved the moment my company valuation hit 8 figures. Saturday arrived with a mixture of dread and anticipation. I chose my outfit carefully. A simple black dress, the same pearl necklace I'd borrowed for that first dinner, and minimal makeup. I wanted to look exactly like the woman they dismissed. As we drove up the familiar cobblestone driveway, Luke reached over and squeezed my hand. Ready? I nodded, steeling myself as the grand Ashford home came into view. As I'll ever be. Richard Ashford himself opened the door, smile broad and arms wide. There she is, the woman of the hour. He embraced me like a long-lost daughter while Eleanor air-kissed my cheeks, her perfume engulfing me in a cloud of expensive welcome. Sarah, darling, she gushed. Everyone's been asking about you. Dinner was surreal, the same table, the same china, but this time, all eyes were on me with admiration, instead of suspicion. I answered questions about LuMind, about our expansion plans, about the celebrities who were now endorsing our platform. As dessert was served, Richard raised his glass. To Sarah, proof that the entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well. Maybe you are one of us after all. The table raised their glasses, but I just smiled, saying nothing. Because I knew now, with absolute certainty, that I'd never wanted to be one of them. And soon, though I didn't know it yet, they would want, desperately, to be one of mine. 3 months after Lumine's unexpected explosion into the public consciousness, I barely recognized my own life. Our user base had grown to 2.3 million. We'd moved to sleek offices in a downtown high-rise. Major health insurers were negotiating to include our services in their mental health coverage. Forbes had named me one of their 40 under 40. The New York Times called me a quiet revolutionary in digital mental health. Luke had been nothing but supportive, though I could sense his adjustment to my success wasn't always easy. Once, after a charity gala where multiple people had referred to him as Sarah Carter's husband, he'd gone quiet on the ride home. "Does it bother you?" I'd asked. He'd thought for a moment before answering. "No, it's just strange being on the other side of it. All my life, I've been Richard Ashford's son. Now I'm Sarah Carter's husband. It's different. Different, but not bad." Our relationship had found a new equilibrium. Luke had left his marketing job to start his own consultancy, specializing in ethical branding for tech companies. He was building something of his own, parallel to my success, but distinct from it. The Ashfords, meanwhile, had become our most enthusiastic cheerleaders. At least publicly, they hosted a lavish party to celebrate Sarah's vision. They mentioned my company at their charity events. Eleanor even wore a Lumine-branded pin to a benefit gala, making sure photographers captured it. I tolerated their sudden embrace with distant politeness. Luke understood my reservations, but encouraged me to accept their attempts at reconciliation. "People can change," he'd say. "Maybe they genuinely regret how they treated you." I wasn't convinced, but I played along, attending their events when necessary, accepting their compliments with practiced grace. I was civil, nothing more, nothing less. Then came the news that changed everything. Luke called me from his office, his voice tense. "Have you seen the Wall Street Journal today?" I hadn't. I'd been in back-to-back meetings since dawn. "There's an article about Dad's company. It's not good." I pulled up the article on my computer. The headline said it all. Ashford Global Properties faces liquidity crisis amid failed Dubai development. The story detailed how Richard Ashford's company had invested heavily in a massive luxury development in Dubai that had run into regulatory problems and construction delays. With over $300 million tied up in the stalled project and significant debt coming due, Ashford Global was facing a serious cash crunch. "Is it as bad as it sounds?" I asked Luke. His silence was answer enough. Over the next 2 weeks, more details emerged. The Dubai project wasn't the only problem. Ashford Global had been struggling for years, taking on increasing debt to maintain the appearance of success. The family's personal wealth, while still substantial, was nowhere near what everyone believed. They had been living on leverage and reputation. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of dark satisfaction. All their judgment of me, all their concern about my financial motivations, had been projection. They'd been the vulnerable ones all along. Then the handwritten letter arrived. I recognized Eleanor's elegant script on the cream envelope. Inside was a 3-page letter, carefully composed but with unmistakable desperation beneath the polished phrasing. "Dear Sarah, I hope this letter finds you well. I've been reflecting deeply on our family's journey these past 2 years, particularly on my own failures as a mother-in-law and as a human being. The way Richard and I treated you was unforgivable. Our suspicions, our investigation, our coldness, all of it stemmed from our own insecurities and outdated notions of worth. We judged you because we feared someone outside our circle might see through the facade we'd built. You have proven to be not only a brilliant entrepreneur, but a woman of remarkable character. The success you've achieved through your own ingenuity and persistence is something I deeply admire. You've created something meaningful, something that helps people in genuine ways. I'm writing to ask if we might meet just the 2 of us to discuss a potential collaboration. Ashford Global is exploring strategic partnerships in the tech sector, and we believe there could be valuable synergies between our companies. More importantly, I'm hoping for a chance to begin healing the wounds our family has caused. Luke loves you deeply, and I want nothing more than to truly welcome you into our family. Not as an Ashford acquisition, but as the remarkable woman you are. With sincere admiration and hope, Ellen. I read the letter twice, noting the careful blend of personal apology and business proposition. The word synergies told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't about healing family wounds. This was about access to Lumine's capital and my connections. I showed the letter to Luke that evening. He read it silently, his expression unreadable. "What do you think?" I asked when he finished. "I think my mother is desperate," he said finally. "The company is in worse shape than even the papers know. And the apology?" He sighed. "Probably sincere in her way, but also strategic." He looked at me. "What are you going to do?" Before I could answer, his phone rang. His father, Luke, put it on speaker. "Luke," Richard's voice was strained. "I was hoping you and Sarah might join us for dinner tomorrow." "What's the occasion?" Luke asked carefully. "We're having a small board meeting in the morning. I thought it might be good for Sarah to attend given her expertise in the tech sector. Just as an observer, of course." Luke raised an eyebrow at me. I shook my head slightly. "I don't think that would be appropriate, Dad," Luke said. "Sarah isn't a shareholder or advisor to Ashford Global." "Well, that's actually something we'd like to discuss," Richard said, his voice brightening with forced cheer. "The board is considering bringing on some new investors with fresh perspectives. We thought Sarah might be interested." The request was so transparent, it was almost painful. After dismissing me as a gold digger, they now wanted me to bail out their failing company. "I'll have to check our schedule," Luke said diplomatically. "I'll call you back." After he hung up, he looked at me. "You don't have to do this." "Actually," I said slowly, "I think I do." "You're considering investing?" Luke asked, surprised. "No," I replied. "But I think I need to go to that meeting. I need to hear what they have to say." The next day, I arrived at Ashford Global's headquarters, wearing the same simple blue dress I'd worn to the first dinner at the Ashford home. A small, petty choice perhaps, but symbolic. I wanted them to see exactly who I'd always been. As I stepped into the elevator that would take me to the top floor boardroom, I steeled myself for what was coming. The Ashfords had once questioned who I really was. Now finally, they were about to find out. The Ashford Global boardroom was exactly as I had imagined. Mahogany table gleaming under soft lighting, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, oil paintings of stern-faced Ashford patriarchs watching from the walls. 8 board members in expensive suits sat around the table, with Richard at the head. Eleanor stood by a side table, arranging coffee and pastries. A surprisingly domestic role for her. Luke had decided to skip the meeting. "This is between you and them," he'd said. "I trust you to handle it." All eyes turned to me as I entered. Richard stood quickly, extending his hand. "Sarah, thank you for coming. Everyone, this is Sarah Carter, my daughter-in-law and a founder of Lumine." The introduction was heavy with implication. Family first, accomplishment second. I corrected him gently. "Sarah Carter, CEO of Lumine Technologies." And Luke's wife, of course. I took a seat across from Richard, smiling politely as Eleanor rushed to pour me coffee. Her hands trembled slightly as she set the cup before me. "We're so pleased you could join us," she said. "Richard has prepared a presentation." Richard dimmed the lights and launched into a slick slide deck about strategic synergies and complementary business models. The proposal was audacious. Ashford Global would create a new health tech division with Lumine as its cornerstone investment. They would provide real estate for expansion, connections to traditional healthcare systems, and their prestigious family name in exchange for a significant stake in my company. "Of course," Richard concluded, "you would maintain creative control. We simply want to provide the infrastructure, help your vision reach its full potential." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to me. I took a slow sip of coffee, gathering my thoughts. "That's certainly an interesting proposal," I said finally. "But I have some questions." For the next 20 minutes, I methodically dismantled their pitch, asking detailed questions about their debt structure, their failed Dubai project, their actual liquid assets. With each question, Richard's confidence faltered. The board members shifted uncomfortably. "I've done my research," I explained. "Ashford Global needs a cash infusion of at least $50 million to meet your immediate obligations, and probably another $100 million to salvage the Dubai project." Richard's face had gone pale. "Our financial challenges are temporary." "They're structural," I corrected him gently. "Your company has been over-leveraged for years. You've been maintaining appearances while the foundation crumbled." Eleanor interjected, her voice strained with forced brightness. We've weathered downturns before. The Ashford name still means something. It does, I agreed. But names don't pay debts. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. 2 years ago, I'd sat in the Ashfords' dining room, feeling small and inadequate. Now, I stood in their boardroom, holding their fate in my hands. I won't be investing in Ashford Global, I said, turning back to face them. Not as it currently exists. The room deflated, hope draining from their faces. However, I continued, LuMind is launching a foundation focused on accessible mental health care in underserved communities. We need physical spaces, community centers where people can access our technology, alongside human providers. If Ashford Global wants to donate some of its properties for this purpose, we could explore a partnership that might help restore your company's public image and create some tax advantages. It wasn't a bailout, not even close, but it was a lifeline, small and conditional. Richard started to protest, but Eleanor laid a hand on his arm. We'll consider it, she said quietly. As the meeting concluded, Eleanor walked me to the elevator. When the doors closed behind us, leaving us alone, her carefully maintained composure cracked. You're enjoying this, aren't you? She asked. I considered my answer carefully. No, Eleanor, I don't enjoy seeing anyone struggle. Not even you. But you won't help us. Not really. I'm offering what makes sense for my company and my mission. Just business, nothing personal. I smiled slightly. Isn't that what the Ashfords always say? The elevator reached the lobby, and I stepped out. Eleanor remained inside, looking suddenly older and very tired. For what it's worth, she said as the doors began to close. I was wrong about you. I know, I replied simply. Outside, Luke was waiting in our car, not the luxury vehicle his parents had always expected him to drive, but our practical hybrid. He looked up anxiously as I approached. How did it go? I slid into the passenger seat and let out a long breath. It went exactly as it needed to. On the drive home, I told him everything. How I declined their investment proposal, but offered the foundation partnership instead. How his father had looked both shocked and humbled. How his mother had finally admitted she was wrong. Are you okay? He asked when I finished. I am, I said, surprised to find it was true. I don't hate them, Luke. I don't even want revenge. I just wanted to be seen for who I really am. That night, as we sat on our balcony watching the sunset, Luke's phone rang. It was his father. Luke put it on speaker. I've been thinking about Sarah's proposal, Richard said, his voice lacking its usual confidence. She's right about everything. We've been living a lie for years. Luke looked at me, eyes wide. I'd like to meet with both of you, Richard continued. Not about business, about family, about starting over. After Luke hung up, he took my hand. What do you think? Should we give them another chance? I thought about everything that had happened. The investigation, the rejection, the sudden embrace when I became successful. Attempted manipulation, but I also thought about the future. About healing. About the possibility of genuine change. Yes, I decided, but on our terms, not theirs. As darkness fell over the city, I looked out at the twinkling lights and felt a profound sense of peace. I had built something real, not just a successful company, but a life of my own making. The mirage they had seen when they looked at me, the gold digger, the opportunist, had vanished, replaced by the woman I had always been, the woman I had fought to become. LuMind was changing lives. Luke and I were building a future on mutual respect and support. And maybe, just maybe, the Ashfords could learn to see beyond wealth and status to what really mattered. They thought I married into money. They never imagined I'd become the reason they needed it.